You may select any princess, human, she said. And I replied, I choose you the kingdom of Alarion lay beneath a sky painted in eternal twilight, where the sun hovered like a dim lantern, never fully rising or setting. Shadows stretched across cobblestone streets and whispered through the tall spires of the royal palace, weaving secrets into the cold, ancient walls. It was said that the kingdom was cursed, not by a careless god or vengeful spirit, but by the choices of its own rulers long ago. Every generation bore the weight of that darkness, yet life continued, fragile as dew on the petals of midnight flowers. Cale had never imagined a life beyond the small village of Lareth, where the mountains kissed the horizon and the wind carried stories from distant lands. He lived quietly, his days filled with tending to animals and gathering herbs, his nights filled with the soft hum of the river. The villagers often spoke of magic and royalty as though they were stories from a faraway dream. Cale had always listened politely, but the stories had never felt real until the day the summons arrived. It came on parchment black as midnight, sealed with a wax emblem he had never seen before, a crown entwined with thorned vines. The words inside were simple, yet their weight pressed against his chest like a stone. You are hereby summoned to the royal palace of Alarion. The princess has selected you for the trials of choice. Arrive before the third moonrise or the opportunity will be void. Cale stared at the letter as if it were a puzzle he could not solve. A princess had chosen him. He was nothing more than a farmer's son, unremarkable in skill or station. His first instinct was disbelief, then laughter, but deep inside a trembling warmth stirred. Something about the words whispered of destiny. The journey to the palace was long and treacherous. Cale walked through forests thick with mist, where the trees seemed to lean closer with every step, their leaves brushing against his cloak like gentle hands. Strange sounds echoed through the night. Whispers of creatures unseen, the flutter of wings, the soft pad of paws across the undergrowth. He felt watched, yet not threatened, as if the land itself recognized him as part of a story that was just beginning. When Cale finally reached the gates of Alarion, the sun was a muted golden disk on the horizon. The palace towers rose like dark fingers into the sky, their edges carved with intricate symbols that pulsed faintly with magic. The guards at the gate were silent, their eyes hidden beneath metal visors. Without question, they led him through marble corridors lit by lanterns that flickered with an unnatural light. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting and twisting as if alive. At the heart of the palace, Cale was brought to the grand hall. Its ceilings were impossibly high, adorned with frescoes of kings and queens whose eyes seemed to follow him. At the far end of the hall, a figure awaited him. Princess Seraphine stood alone, a vision of quiet power. Her hair, dark as a raven's wing, fell in perfect waves around her shoulders, and her eyes, violet and piercing, seemed to look directly into his soul. "You have come," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "I wondered if you would." Cale felt his tongue dry. I received your summons," he managed. Seraphine's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not many would answer, not truly, but you came of your own will. That is why you stand here now." She took a step closer, and Cale felt the air shift, heavy with something he could not name. Fear, desire, reverence, perhaps all at once. "The trials of choice are not simple," she continued. "They test heart, courage, and truth. Many have failed, some have not returned at all." Cale swallowed, his pulse quickening. He wanted to ask what the trials entailed, but the words died in his throat. Somehow he already knew that asking would be pointless. This was not a matter of knowledge or skill. It was about something far greater, connection, trust, and the willingness to face what one feared most. "Do you understand what you are committing to?" Seraphine asked, her gaze steady and unyielding. Cale nodded, even though he did not fully understand. He only knew that when he looked at her, the world felt sharper, more real, as if color and shadow were clearer than they had ever been. I will do my best," he said. For a long moment she studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke words that made his heart leap and tremble all at once. "You may select any princess, human," she said, her tone deliberate, echoing through the hall. "And yet I choose you." The hall seemed to still around him. Whispers of courtiers froze mid-breath, and the air grew thick with anticipation. Cale felt the weight of those words settle into his bones. He had never imagined a life beyond his village, yet now it stretched before him like a path bathed in moonlight. "Me?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said, stepping closer. The faint scent of night-blooming flowers followed her, mingling with the cool air of the hall. I have chosen you, not for wealth, not for lineage, but because there is something in you. Something the kingdom needs. Cale's mind reeled. He had no idea what that meant, but he felt a strange certainty. Perhaps the princess saw what others could not. Perhaps he was not the man he thought himself to be. Before he could speak, a deep chime resonated through the hall. The palace doors swung open, revealing a figure cloaked in shadows. The room darkened as the figure stepped forward, and Cale instinctively took a step back. The trials begin at first moonrise, the figure intoned, voice like gravel. Prepare, for the path you walk is not your own. Seraphine placed a delicate hand on Cale's arm. Fear is natural, she said softly. But courage is what will carry you through. Trust yourself, Cale, and trust me. The figure disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only the echo of its warning. Cale's heart pounded. He wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but words felt meaningless against the weight of destiny pressing down on him. Instead, he met Seraphine's gaze and nodded, feeling a bond forming between them, a fragile, unspoken promise that neither fully understood. That night, Cale was given quarters within the palace. He could hear the wind sighing through the towers, carrying with it faint whispers of the past, laughter, sorrow, warnings. Sleep eluded him, replaced by visions of trials he did not yet understand and the mysterious princess who had chosen him. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified, yet beneath it all lay a strange calm. He was part of something larger now, something dangerous and beautiful. When the first moon rose, silver and haunting above the palace, Cale found himself in the courtyard with Seraphine. She stood beneath the ancient fountain, its waters still and dark as ink. The trials are not simple tests, she said, her eyes reflecting the pale light. They are mirrors of the heart. You will face what you fear most, and only by facing it together can we endure what comes next. Cale swallowed his fear. Together, he repeated, as if saying the word aloud would make it true. Seraphine extended her hand. Then take it, Cale, and step forward. Your choice is no longer just yours, it is ours. Cale hesitated for only a heartbeat before placing his hand in hers. The moment their fingers touched, the air shifted. A cold wind swept through the courtyard, carrying whispers that made Cale shiver. Shadows twisted at the edges of the fountain, forming shapes that seemed almost human, almost alive. He looked to Seraphine, whose expression remained calm, yet her eyes held the faintest glimmer of fear, or perhaps anticipation. Cale realized then that the trials would not only test his courage but his heart, and whatever awaited them, it would change them forever. A distant roar echoed from the palace walls, low and powerful, like a warning from the kingdom itself. Cale tightened his grip on Seraphine's hand. He did not know what lay ahead, only that he could not turn back. The princess had chosen him, and he in turn had chosen to follow her into the unknown. The courtyard grew silent again, but the shadows lingered, curling around them like dark fingers. The first step had been taken, and the trials were beginning. Somewhere beyond the palace, the curse of Ilarion stirred, sensing the mortal who dared to challenge fate. Cale drew in a steadying breath. Whatever comes, he whispered, we face it together. Seraphine's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. Yes, she said, together until the end. The wind carried her words into the night, and the moonlight fell upon them like a blessing or a warning. And so, with hearts uncertain but bound by choice, Cale and Seraphine stepped into the shadows of destiny, unaware of the dangers, the magic, and the love that awaited them. The first trial had begun, and neither would leave unchanged. The palace of Ilarion had grown silent after the first night of Cale's arrival. Moonlight spilled through tall, arched windows, touching the cold marble floors and the walls adorned with faded tapestries that whispered of kings and queens long gone. Outside, the shadows seemed alive, curling like fingers around the towers. Cale awoke with a mix of anticipation and unease, the events of the previous day replaying in his mind. The princess's words, the first moon, and the feeling that he was stepping into a fate far larger than himself. When he descended to the courtyard, Seraphine was already waiting. Her presence was calm, but beneath it shimmered a quiet intensity that made Cale's heart pound. She wore a simple gown of midnight blue that reflected the pale moonlight, and her eyes glimmered like distant stars. The trials begin now, she said softly, her voice carrying over the still night. You will face visions of your past, your fears, and the desires you keep hidden. Only by facing them honestly can you move forward. And know this, she added, taking a step closer, the shadows here are not merely illusions, they test the truth of your heart. Kale swallowed, feeling the weight of her gaze. He had never considered himself brave. Courage, he thought, was something heroes in stories possessed. Yet somehow, standing before Seraphine, he felt a strange courage rising within him. A determination not to fail, not for himself, but for her. Together, they stepped into the central courtyard, where a circle of faintly glowing runes had appeared overnight. The air shimmered above the stones, and Kale felt it hum against his skin, as if the magic recognized him or perhaps challenged him. "Hold my hand," Seraphine whispered. He obeyed, and the moment their fingers intertwined, the runes ignited with silver light. Shadows stretched from the corners of the courtyard, writhing into shapes that were human and not human. Faces emerged in the darkness, twisted in expressions of sorrow, anger, and longing. Kale's stomach twisted. What is this?" he asked. "The first trial," Seraphine said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "They are reflections of your heart. You must confront them, Kale, not fight them. Truth is the only path forward." The shadows advanced, forming figures from Kale's past. First came his childhood, his mother's gentle smile, his father's stern, silent guidance. Then the shadows shifted, revealing fears he had never shared, failures, doubts, regrets. Each figure spoke, their voices echoing in the courtyard. "You are weak," one shadow whispered. "You cannot protect her. You will fail," another murmured, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Kale clenched his fists, feeling panic rise, but Seraphine's touch on his hand grounded him. "Do not let fear decide for you," she said. "Face them, Kale, speak your truth." He closed his eyes and drew a deep breath. "I am not perfect," he said aloud, voice shaking. "I do not know all I need to know, but I will learn, I will stand, I will protect those I care for." The shadows flickered, twisting and murmuring. Then with a soft hiss they recoiled, dissolving into mist. The courtyard fell quiet, the runes dimming but still glowing faintly beneath their feet. Kale exhaled, feeling a strange exhilaration. He had faced his fears, and he had survived. Seraphine studied him with intensity, a faint smile brushing her lips. "Well done," she said. "Few pass the first trial with their heart intact. You have potential, Kale." He felt warmth flood his chest at her words, but also unease. The trials had only begun. What awaited them in the shadows beyond this courtyard? "Come," Seraphine said, leading him toward the eastern wing of the palace. The walls there were lined with mirrors, tall and ornate. As they approached, Kale saw his reflection, then noticed something unsettling. The reflection moved independently. His mirrored self smiled when he did not, frowned when he tried to appear calm. "The second trial," Seraphine explained. "Desire and temptation. The mirrors show not what is, but what could be, what you long for or what you fear to admit." Kale's reflection shifted again, showing him standing apart from Seraphine, leaving her alone in the courtyard. The image tugged at his heart, stirring doubts he had never spoken. Could he protect her if he were weak? Could he endure the trials without faltering? "You are afraid," Seraphine said quietly, reading his mind. "Good, fear is natural, but you must act despite it, Kale. Do not let illusions shape your choices." He nodded, forcing himself to meet the gaze of the reflected self. "I choose to stand with her," he said firmly. The mirror rippled, and the reflection aligned with reality, smiling at him with understanding. The third trial came quickly, without warning. They entered a hall cloaked in darkness, the only light coming from faint orbs that floated like lanterns. The air was thick, carrying the faint scent of smoke and earth. From the shadows, voices emerged, whispering secrets of the palace, truths and lies intertwined. Kale felt them pressing against his mind, testing his resolve. "Do not be afraid of the whispers," Seraphine said. "They are part of the trial. They will try to lure you into doubt. Ignore them and listen to your heart." Kale's heart raced as shadowy figures emerged, resembling courtiers he had seen the day before. They murmured of betrayal, envy, and power, suggesting that he was unworthy of the princess, that his presence would bring ruin. Every word cut into his confidence like a blade. He looked at Seraphine, finding her calm presence anchoring him. I do not believe you," he said aloud, shaking off the shadow's influence. "I will not let you divide us. I will face the trial, and I will choose love, trust, and courage." The shadows recoiled again, fading into nothingness. Kale felt his strength returning, his connection to Seraphine deepening. He realized that the trials were not meant to punish him. They were meant to forge him, to awaken a courage he had never known. By the time they reached the final part of the trial for the night, the courtyard had transformed again. The moonlight now shimmered silver on a fountain whose waters reflected not just their faces, but the kingdom itself. Kale could see Alarion in miniature, its towers and streets bathed in a mystical glow, the shadows crawling like veins across the land. Seraphine placed a hand on his chest, close to his heart. "This is the true test," she said softly. "Do you see the kingdom, Kale? Its fate rests not only on the crown, but on the choices we make together. Will you face it? Will you stand beside me, not as a subject, not as a suitor, but as an equal in heart and courage?" Kale's pulse thundered in his ears. He had never imagined such responsibility. Yet as he looked into her eyes, violet and unwavering, he felt clarity and resolve. "I will stand with you," he said, voice steady, "through shadow, through fear, through whatever comes." Her smile was faint, almost sorrowful. "Then we are ready," she said. "But be warned, Kale, not all shadows can be faced with courage alone. Some demand sacrifice, some demand truth you may not yet know you hold. The trials of choice are far from over." A sudden chill swept the courtyard, and the shadows from the fountain began to rise, twisting into shapes that resembled wolves with eyes like molten gold. Kale instinctively stepped in front of Seraphine, ready to defend her, even as he felt an unfamiliar power stirring within the runes beneath his feet. The creatures circled them, silent but menacing, their gaze fixed on him as if testing the strength of his heart. "Do not falter," Seraphine whispered, her hand tight in his. "They are part of the trial. Trust yourself and trust me." Kale's fear was sharp, a knife cutting through the exhilaration he had felt moments before. Yet in that fear he found determination. The creatures lunged, but he did not run. He stepped forward, heart pounding, and met them with unwavering gaze. The shadows hesitated, then bowed, dissipating into mist that hung in the night air. Kale exhaled, his body trembling, but his spirit stronger than ever. He had faced his fears, his doubts, and now the living shadows of the kingdom itself. The moon reflected in Seraphine's eyes, and he felt something stirring deep inside him, something more than courage, something more than loyalty. It was longing, trust, and a quiet, growing love that neither of them had yet spoken aloud. Seraphine's hand squeezed his. "The first night of trials is over," she said. "Rest now, Kale. Tomorrow the challenges will be greater. The shadows grow stronger, and they will test not just your heart, but your bond with me." Kale nodded, his mind still reeling from the night's events. As he followed her to his chambers, he realized that he was no longer the same man who had arrived at the palace. He had begun to awaken to something larger than himself, a destiny intertwined with the princess, the palace, and the shadows that lingered beyond the light. Outside his window, the moon cast silver light on the kingdom. Somewhere deep in the palace walls, whispers of the curse stirred. Kale felt it like a pulse, a heartbeat of the ancient magic that bound Alarion, but for the first time he did not feel fear. He felt readiness, and he felt love, quiet, fierce, and unyielding. As he drifted into sleep, the last thought on his mind was Seraphine's words, "Trust yourself and trust me." The trials had begun, and neither the darkness of the palace nor the shadows of his own heart could prepare him for what lay ahead. The morning light in Alarion was pale, filtered through the ever-present twilight that hovered over the kingdom. Even at dawn, shadows clung to the marble corridors of the palace, as if reluctant to let go of the night. Kale rose from his bed, muscles still sore from the trials of the previous night, yet his spirit was restless with anticipation. He felt as though he had stepped into a world that was both beautiful and dangerous, a world where every choice had weight beyond comprehension. Seraphine awaited him in the courtyard, her expression unreadable, though her violet eyes held a faint glimmer of concern. The air between them carried a tension that neither words nor gestures could easily break. "The trials are changing," she said softly, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind. "The shadows are growing stronger. They respond not just to fear, but to desire, to regret, and to love." Kale frowned. "Love," she nodded. "The bond we share is unusual. You are mortal, and I am bound by powers beyond human understanding. The magic of this kingdom recognizes that connection. It awakens because of it, and the curse knows it." Kale shivered. The word curse had always felt distant, a story to frighten children. Now it was real, it was alive, it was patient, and it was watching him. Their first task that day took them to the Hall of Echoes, a long corridor where every sound they made returned to them amplified, distorted, and layered over itself. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, glowing faintly as though breathing with a life of their own. Kale noticed the air thrummed almost like a heartbeat, matching the rhythm of his own pulse. "Listen carefully," Seraphine instructed. "The echoes reveal truth. They will tempt you to doubt, to turn against yourself or me. Do not falter." The moment they stepped forward, voices filled the hall. First, whispers of the court repeating slanders and doubts Kale had overheard on the day of his arrival. Then, darker, unfamiliar voices spoke of fear and failure. "You cannot protect her." Her hand was steady in his, grounding him, reminding him that he was not alone. I am stronger than fear," Kale said aloud, his voice shaking but growing steadier with each word. "I will face the shadows and I will protect what matters to me." The echoes wavered, as if uncertain, then quieted. Kale exhaled, feeling the first real sense of triumph since arriving at the palace. But he knew instinctively that the trials were far from over. As they moved deeper into the hall, the shadows thickened. Shapes emerged from the darkness, humanoid but grotesque, their limbs stretching unnaturally, eyes glowing faintly red. They did not speak, but Kale could feel their scrutiny, their intent. They were testing him, not just his courage, but his heart. Seraphine's hand tightened around his. "You must understand," she said quietly. "The curse is no longer passive. Every act of courage, every choice of trust, awakens it further. Soon it will challenge not just your hearts, but your very souls." The creatures lunged, not with claws or teeth, but with shadows that tried to wrap around Kale and Seraphine to separate them. Kale instinctively stepped in front of Seraphine, holding her hand tightly, focusing on their connection. The shadows recoiled when he did not falter, dissolving into mist. Kale realized something frightening and thrilling. His bond with Seraphine gave him power. Not magical in the traditional sense, but a power born from trust, courage, and love. And yet the awareness of that power brought responsibility. He could not fail, not for himself and not for her. After the Hall of Echoes, they were guided to the Garden of Reflection, a place said to hold memories of the kingdom's past, present, and possible futures. The garden was unlike any Kale had ever seen. Trees with silver leaves whispered secrets, fountains reflected visions not just of the present, but of choices not yet made. The air smelled faintly of rain and something deeper, older, magic older than the palace itself. Seraphine led him to a fountain at the garden's center. Its waters shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "This trial," she said, "reveals the heart's desire. The curse seeks to tempt you, Kale. It will show what you most want and what you fear losing. You must face it honestly, or the trial will consume you." Kale peered into the water. His reflection twisted and shifted, showing him standing apart from Seraphine, leaving her alone in the palace, her face twisted in sorrow. Then the reflection changed, showing him as a hero, celebrated by the kingdom, Seraphine smiling at him, proud and happy. A part of him wanted to reach for that vision of glory, yet another part, the part that had guided him through the first trials, reminded him of the truth. Glory was nothing without her. "I choose to stand with her," he whispered, placing his hand over the water. The reflection stabilized, showing them together, their hands clasped, facing the trials as one. Seraphine's eyes softened. "You are learning," she said. "The trials are not only about courage, they are about truth, about choosing what matters above all else. You are learning quickly." Kale felt warmth fill him, a combination of pride, relief, and a growing fondness for the princess. He realized with a sudden clarity that this was more than admiration. His heart, once quiet and cautious, now ached for her presence, her guidance, her strength. But before he could dwell on the feeling, a low growl echoed from the garden's edges. Shadows thickened beneath the silver trees, swirling like smoke, coalescing into forms that resembled the wolves from the first night, but larger, more menacing. Their eyes glowed with golden fire, and the air vibrated with their silent warning. "The curse," Seraphine whispered, voice tight. "It is awakening faster than I anticipated. You must be ready, Kale. These creatures are drawn not by anger, but by your bond with me." Kale felt a cold fear grip him, yet he refused to step back. He had faced illusions, whispers, and shadows. Now he faced something real, something alive. "We face it together," he said, squeezing Seraphine's hand. "Whatever comes, we stand side by side." The wolves lunged, but Kale did not flinch. He focused not on the fear, but on the connection that had guided him through the previous trials. The shadows hesitated, their forms wavering. Seraphine whispered an incantation, subtle but powerful, and Kale felt energy surge through him. Not magic he had learned, but power drawn from trust, courage, and love. With a sudden surge, Kale stepped forward and the shadows recoiled, dissipating like smoke in the wind. The garden fell silent once more, leaving only the rustle of silver leaves and the gentle murmur of fountains. Kale exhaled, trembling with exertion and relief. "Is it over?" he asked. "For now," Seraphine replied, her hand still in his. "But the curse knows we are aware of it. It will act. Soon we will face trials not of reflection or illusion, but of danger that can harm us both and the kingdom itself." Kale nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The bond between them was no longer simple companionship. It had become a shield, a weapon, and a source of strength. Yet he also knew that the curse's awakening meant that the dangers would only grow more severe. Every step they took together would be tested, every trust stretched to its limits. That evening, as they returned to the palace, Kale felt an unfamiliar weight settle over him. The trials were not just a test of courage, they were a test of the heart, and the heart was fragile. But alongside that weight was a spark, a warmth that he had never known. It was the knowledge that he was not alone, that the princess's choice had entwined their destinies, and that he was no longer merely a mortal wandering into a palace. The night deepened and the palace shadows lengthened. Somewhere in the distance, the wind carried a whisper, soft yet unmistakable, promising challenges and danger yet to come. Kale drew Seraphine closer, her presence steadying him against the unknown. "Whatever comes," he said quietly, "we will face it together." Seraphine nodded, resting her head against his shoulder for a fleeting moment. "Yes, Kale, together, but be warned, the curse is patient. It will test not just our courage, but our bond, our hearts, and our souls. Only by standing firm can we hope to endure what comes next." As Kale drifted to sleep that night, he knew the trials of choice were far from over. The shadows had awakened, the curse had stirred, and the kingdom itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. And in the quiet of the Twilight Palace, two hearts, one mortal, one bound by magic, beat together, ready for the dangers, the revelations, and the love that awaited them. The palace of Ilarion felt different now. Shadows lingered in every corner, twisting along the walls, and the air carried a faint hum, like the heartbeat of some ancient being. Kale had grown accustomed to the strangeness, yet a sense of foreboding clung to him. Every corridor, every whisper of wind seemed to warn that the trials of choice were far from over. Seraphine found him in the northern tower, staring out over the kingdom. The silver twilight stretched endlessly, the forests and rivers bathed in muted light. Her expression was calm but solemn, her violet eyes reflecting the weight of the burdens they now shared. "The curse has grown stronger," she said softly. "It senses your bond with me, and it knows you will not falter." Kale turned to face her. "I feel it too," he admitted. "The shadows, they are watching, waiting, and I know they will test us further." Seraphine stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. "Yes, the trials now will not only test courage and truth, but sacrifice. Every choice has consequences, Kale. And some may cost more than we are willing to pay." Kale's heart tightened. He had faced shadows, illusions, and whispers of fear, but the word sacrifice made him pause. He thought of his simple village, the life he had known, and yet he had already stepped far from it. The princess had chosen him, and he had chosen her. There was no turning back. The first trial that morning led them into the heart of the palace, a place few had seen. The air was heavy, almost tangible, and the corridors seemed alive, stretching and bending in impossible ways. The walls pulsed with faint light, casting moving shadows that danced across the floor. Kale felt the weight of the palace pressing in on him, and yet with Seraphine by his side, he felt grounded. "Remember," she said, taking his hand, "we face this together. Trust the bond, and it will guide you." The trial revealed itself suddenly. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, with eyes that gleamed like molten gold. Its presence was commanding, yet cold, and Kale felt a wave of dread sweep over him. "This is the spirit of the curse," Seraphine whispered. "It tests us directly now. You must face it, Kale, not with strength alone, but with truth. What you hold in your heart, it will be the only weapon you have." The figure moved forward, its form shifting between human and shadow. Its voice was a hiss that filled the chamber. "Mortals and royals alike are weak. You cannot defy the fate written for you." Kale's first instinct was to step back, to shield Seraphine. But he remembered the trials so far, remembered the courage he had drawn from their bond. "I do not deny the danger," he said, voice steady despite the fear curling in his chest. But I also do not deny what I choose. I choose to protect her, to stand by her, and to face whatever comes with her at my side. The spirit's form wavered, as if uncertain, then advanced again. Shadows lashed out, twisting toward Kale and Seraphine. Instinctively, Kale stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and Seraphine. A strange warmth spread from their hands where they were clasped, radiating outward, pushing the shadows back. Seraphine whispered an incantation, subtle yet powerful, and the figure recoiled. But it was clear that this was only a warning. The curse had awakened fully now, testing not just courage but the strength of their connection. After the encounter, Seraphine guided Kale deeper into the heart of the palace, to a chamber lined with mirrors. The glass reflected not just their images, but visions of possible futures. Kale saw himself failing, leaving Seraphine, the kingdom in ruin, shadows consuming all. Then he saw a future of victory, the curse broken, the kingdom bathed in dawn. Each reflection carried weight, each vision a temptation or a warning. "This is the trial of choice," Seraphine said. "The curse seeks to turn your heart, to tempt you with easy paths, with fear, with doubt. You must choose what matters most, even if the cost is great." Kale stepped forward, hand brushing Seraphine's. "I choose us," he said firmly. "Whatever comes, whatever I must give, I will not abandon you. Not now, not ever." The mirrors flickered and shifted. The reflections showed him giving up his life to protect hers, standing alone as the kingdom trembled. Kale felt fear, but he also felt resolve. He realized that love was not simple, and courage was not enough. Sacrifice would be demanded, yet he was ready. The final trial that day came in the Garden of Shadows, where the trees had black leaves that absorbed the twilight rather than reflecting it. The air was thick with a strange energy, and Kale could sense the eyes of unseen creatures upon them. A low growl echoed through the garden, and the shadows moved, forming shapes that were larger, faster, and more intelligent than anything they had faced before. Seraphine's hand held his tightly. "The curse tests what we are willing to give," she said. "Prepare yourself, we may need to risk everything to survive." The shadow creatures lunged, surrounding them. Kale felt fear clawing at him, but he focused on Seraphine, on their connection. With a shared glance, they stepped forward together, drawing strength from the bond they had forged. Kale realized something incredible. The shadows could be repelled not just by magic, but by their unity, by the trust and courage in their hearts. Each step forward weakened the creatures, each breath taken together reinforced their power, yet the trial demanded more. The largest shadow, the one at the center, leapt toward Seraphine. Without hesitation, Kale stepped in front of her. The shadow struck him, and he felt an unfamiliar surge of energy, as if the palace itself was feeding through him. Pain coursed through his body, yet he did not falter. Seraphine chanted, and Kale felt a bridge forming between them, a tether of light and courage. He understood then that the curse did not seek merely to test strength. It sought to measure love, devotion, and the willingness to risk oneself for another. When the shadow finally dissipated, Kale was breathing heavily, but he was alive. Seraphine leaned against him, her eyes filled with relief and admiration. "You have grown so much in so little time," she whispered. I am proud of you, Kale, and yet—" He looked at her, sensing the unspoken warning. "Yet what?" she hesitated. "Yet the greatest sacrifices are still to come. The curse will not rest, and the kingdom itself may demand a choice neither of us can predict." Kale nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had come far, but he knew the trials were only beginning. His courage, his love, and his devotion would be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. Yet he also felt a growing certainty. He would face whatever came, not alone, but with Seraphine by his side. That night, as they rested in the northern tower, Kale reflected on the day's events. The trials had not only tested him, they had changed him. Fear had been replaced with determination, doubt with clarity, and admiration with a deep, quiet love. He understood now that the curse was more than a shadow. It was a force that demanded truth, courage, and heart. Seraphine sat beside him, her hand brushing his. "The trials have shaped you," she said softly, "but they will demand more. You will be tested not only by shadows, but by choices, and some choices may ask you to give more than you thought possible." Kale reached for her hand. "Whatever comes, we face it together," he said. "I will not turn away, I will not abandon you." Seraphine's eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment the weight of the curse seemed to lift. "Then we are ready," she said. "But remember, love and courage may guide us, but sacrifice will define us." Outside, the palace trembled faintly, as if aware of their resolve. The curse, awakened fully now, stirred in the shadows, preparing its next test. Kale and Seraphine had faced fear, illusion, and shadow, but the greatest challenges and the deepest revelations were yet to come. As Kale closed his eyes that night, he held Seraphine's hand tightly. The trials had awakened not just courage, but a love that defied fear, that would endure beyond shadows, beyond doubt, and perhaps beyond even the curse itself. And in the quiet of the Twilight Palace, a figure watched, eyes glowing faintly gold, whispering promises of tests that would push them to the edge. The curse had awakened fully, and nothing in Ilarion would remain the same. The palace of Ilarion had grown quieter in the days following the first trials. Yet the air felt heavier, almost alive, as though it carried the pulse of the kingdom's ancient magic. Shadows lingered in corners, stretching along corridors and behind pillars, as if waiting for a misstep. Kale moved carefully, aware that each step, each breath might draw the attention of forces he did not yet understand. Seraphine found him in the northern tower, gazing over the kingdom. The twilight sky painted the forests and rivers in muted silver, the horizon a pale, endless line. Her presence was calm, but Kale could sense the weight behind her serene expression. She had carried the burdens of the kingdom for years, and now in her eyes he saw the quiet tension of someone preparing for something immense. "The curse has grown stronger," she said softly, her violet eyes fixed on the horizon. "It senses our bond. And it knows you are more than you believe yourself to be." Kale turned toward her, heart pounding. "I feel it too. The shadows, the whispers, they are different now. They are alive, moving, waiting." Seraphine nodded, stepping closer. "The trials of choice are no longer just tests of courage or truth. They are tests of sacrifice. Every choice you make now has consequences, not just for yourself, but for me and for the kingdom." Kale's chest tightened. He thought of his village, the quiet life he had left behind, and the dangers that had already tested him. And yet, despite fear, he felt a strange warmth in knowing he was not alone. Seraphine had chosen him, and he had chosen her. Together, they had begun a journey that neither fully understood, but both were committed to seeing through. Their first trial that morning led them into the heart of the palace, a section rarely seen by anyone outside the royal family. The air was thick, almost tangible, humming with the energy of centuries-old magic. The corridors twisted and bent in ways that defied logic, walls pulsing faintly as if alive. Kale felt the palace watching him, the shadows responding to every movement. "Remember," Seraphine said, taking his hand, "we face this together. Trust in our bond, it will guide you." From the darkness emerged the first challenge. A figure cloaked in black, its face hidden, moved toward them with a silent, measured step. Its eyes glowed faintly gold, and its presence radiated power that pressed against Kale's chest. "This is the spirit of the curse," Seraphine whispered. "It tests us directly. You must face it not with strength alone, but with truth. Your heart will be your only weapon." The figure spoke, its voice like gravel slipping over stone. "Mortals cannot defy fate. Royals cannot defy the curse. You are weak. You will fail." Kale's instinct was to step back, to shield Seraphine, yet he remembered the lessons of the previous trials. Courage was not absence of fear, it was action in spite of it. "I will not fail," he said, his voice steady. "I will stand with her, protect her, and face whatever comes. That is my choice." The spirit paused, wavering, its form flickering like smoke. Shadows lashed toward them, attempting to push them apart, but Kale did not move. He focused on Seraphine, on their intertwined hands, on the trust and love that had grown between them. The shadows recoiled, fading as if recognizing the strength of their bond. Seraphine whispered an incantation, soft but powerful, and the figure retreated into darkness. Kale realized then that the curse did not simply test bravery. It measured devotion, loyalty, and the willingness to sacrifice for another. Next, they entered the Chamber of Mirrors, a long hall filled with reflective surfaces that shimmered in faint, silver light. The mirrors did not show only their appearances. They showed visions of possible futures. Kale saw himself failing, leaving Seraphine to face the curse alone, the kingdom in ruin. Then he saw visions of victory, the curse defeated, the kingdom bathed in dawn, and Seraphine smiling with pride and relief. Each reflection carried weight, each possibility whispered temptation or warning. Kale's heart twisted at the visions of loss, yet he found clarity in the truth he felt in his chest. "I choose us," he whispered, placing his hand over Seraphine's reflection. Whatever comes, I will stand with her. The mirrors rippled, the visions stabilizing to show them together, side by side, facing the trials as one. Seraphine's eyes softened, and a rare, genuine smile curved her lips. You are learning, Kale. The trials shape not just courage, but the heart, and yours is proving steadfast. Yet even as he felt triumph, the final trial of the day revealed itself in the Garden of Shadows. The trees had black leaves that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The air was heavy, carrying an energy that pressed against Kale's chest, testing every nerve. A low growl echoed, and shadows shifted, forming massive creatures, their eyes glowing like molten gold. Seraphine's hand gripped his. This is the true measure. The curse seeks to test what we are willing to give. We must act as one, Kale, or it will consume us. The shadows lunged, moving with intelligence, surrounding them. Kale's fear rose sharply, yet he did not flinch. He drew on every lesson of the previous trials, every moment of trust and courage. Step by step, he moved with Seraphine, their hands clasped, their hearts aligned. Each act of courage weakened the shadows, each shared glance and word strengthened their resolve. The largest shadow at the center leapt toward Seraphine. Without hesitation, Kale moved in front of her, feeling the strike against his chest. Pain surged through him, yet he held firm, focusing on the bond they had forged. He realized then that the curse's strength depended on division and fear. Unity, love, and courage were its weakness. Seraphine chanted softly, her voice resonating with power, and Kale felt energy flow through him, a force born of trust, devotion, and love. Together they pushed back the shadow until the garden was still, the creatures dissipating into mist. Kale's chest heaved, his body trembling from exertion, yet a warmth filled him. He had faced the curse directly, and he had survived. More than survived, he had begun to understand the extraordinary force that flowed between him and Seraphine. Kale, Seraphine breathed, resting a hand on his shoulder, eyes bright with relief and admiration. You have grown beyond what I feared you capable of. But the greatest sacrifices are still to come. The curse does not rest, and neither will the trials. Kale nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. Courage and love had carried him this far, but he knew the coming challenges would demand more. Perhaps the most difficult would be the choices he would have to make, not for himself, but for Seraphine, for the kingdom, and for the bond that had become his strength. That night in the northern tower, Kale lay awake beside Seraphine. The trials had changed him. Fear had been replaced by determination, doubt by clarity, and admiration by a quiet, fierce love he could not yet name. Every shadow faced, every whisper resisted, every step through danger had awakened not just his courage, but his heart. Seraphine brushed her hand against his. The trials will demand more than courage now, she whispered. Some choices will ask us to give everything, and yet that may be the only way to succeed. Kale reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Whatever comes, we face it together, he said. I will not turn away. I will not abandon you. Seraphine's eyes softened, and for a brief moment the palace felt lighter. But Kale knew the weight of the curse remained. It had awakened fully, its patience immense, its power vast. The shadow of its presence lingered even in moments of calm. And yet, for the first time, Kale did not feel helpless. He had discovered the strength that love and trust could give. The palace trembled faintly, a whisper of the ancient power that had watched over Ilarion for centuries. The curse had stirred, sensing the bond between mortal and princess, understanding that its challenge was now greater than ever. Kale closed his eyes, feeling Seraphine's hand in his, steady and reassuring. The trials had forged their courage, tested their hearts, and awakened a love neither could ignore. Whatever came next, whatever sacrifice awaited, they would face it together, bound not by fear but by choice, trust, and devotion. And in the shadows beyond, a figure observed, eyes glowing like molten gold. It whispered promises of trials yet to come, of choices that would demand more than bravery, more than love. The curse had awakened fully, and nothing in Ilarion would ever be the same. Kale and Seraphine were ready, or as ready as anyone could be, to meet the darkness that awaited them, to face the final trials that would decide not only their fates, but the fate of the entire kingdom. The night was deeper than any Kale had known. The palace of Ilarion seemed to hold its breath, the shadows stretching longer, darker, as if alive. Somewhere within the walls, the curse stirred fully awake, sensing the courage, love, and bond between Kale and Seraphine. Its presence pressed against them, invisible yet undeniable, like a weight on the chest that could neither be lifted nor ignored. Kale stood in the northern courtyard, staring at the silver moon reflecting on the marble floor. Seraphine approached, her violet eyes steady and resolute. "Tonight," she whispered, "the final trial begins. Whatever happens, remember, courage alone is not enough. You must face the truth of your heart, the depth of your choice, and the strength of our bond." Kale nodded, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. He had faced shadows, illusions, and whispers of doubt, but he understood now that the final trial was different. It was no longer about courage. It was about choice, sacrifice, and love, the very essence of what made them human and yet magical. The courtyard shimmered as a portal opened before them, a swirling vortex of silver and black, pulling the shadows into a central point. From its depths, a figure emerged, taller than any human, cloaked in darkness with eyes like molten gold. The presence radiated power, ancient and cold, yet attentive, as if studying them. "This is the curse," Seraphine said, her voice low. "It has taken form. It will challenge us in ways we cannot predict. Kale, you must stand with me without hesitation." The figure spoke, its voice deep and resonant, echoing across the courtyard. "Mortals and royals alike are weak. You have grown in courage and love, yet you have not faced the ultimate truth. Only by sacrifice can you hope to survive. Only by choice can you endure." Kale swallowed hard. The trials had led them here. Every shadow faced, every whisper resisted, every challenge endured had been preparation. He stepped forward, hand brushing Seraphine's. "Whatever comes, we face it together," he said. "I will not abandon you, and I will not fear." The curse's form shifted, growing larger, its shadows twisting into terrifying shapes. Creatures with eyes of molten gold lunged toward them, moving with intelligence and purpose. Kale felt fear surge through him, but he did not falter. He focused on Seraphine, on their hands intertwined, on the bond that had carried him through every trial. "You are brave," the curse intoned, "but bravery alone will not suffice. The choice before you is ultimate. One of you must give what the other cannot." Kale felt a chill run down his spine. The words were a challenge unlike any before. He looked at Seraphine, and in her eyes he saw understanding, fear, and determination all at once. They had reached the point where trust alone could not carry them. Sacrifice would be demanded. The shadows surged forward, and Kale and Seraphine moved as one, fighting not with weapons but with their will. Every step, every movement, reinforced the tether of light and courage that connected them. The creatures faltered, unable to penetrate the unity of their hearts. Then the curse spoke again, more directly, its voice cutting into their minds. "One of you must give up your mortal life, or the kingdom will fall. One must surrender, or both will perish." Kale's heart stopped. The choice was clear, cruel, and impossible. He looked at Seraphine, and in that moment he knew the truth of his feelings. Love was not safe, love was not simple, and yet it was worth every risk. He stepped closer to her. I will give what is needed," he said, voice trembling yet steady. "But only if it saves you, Seraphine, and the kingdom." Seraphine's hand clasped his more tightly. "No," she whispered. "Kale, we are in this together. The choice is not yours alone. The bond we share, it may hold the key to surviving. But we must be willing to face the truth, fully and without fear." The curse's form pulsed, shadows stretching toward them. Visions appeared before Kale, a kingdom destroyed, Seraphine lost, darkness swallowing all. He felt despair, yet the warmth of her hand reminded him that courage was stronger when shared. Kale took a deep breath. "The truth is, I love you," he said, voice firm despite the weight of the moment. "I would give everything for you, not because it is demanded, but because it is my choice. I choose you, always." The curse paused, the shadows trembling. For the first time it hesitated, uncertain of how to respond to a mortal's heart that acted not from fear but from love. Seraphine stepped forward, her other hand lifting, releasing a pulse of her own magic. "And I choose you, Kale," she said, her voice ringing with power. "We are bound not by fear, not by shadows, but by trust and love. Together we are stronger than your darkness." The portal of shadows shivered, twisting violently as if resisting the power of their bond. The molten gold eyes glared, yet the energy between Kale and Seraphine grew brighter, warmer, expanding outward like a shield of light that pushed the shadows back. The final challenge emerged. The shadow of Kale himself, twisted and dark, stepped forward from the portal. It was not a creature, not a reflection, but a version of Kale shaped from fear, doubt, and the whisperings of the curse. It advanced toward him, voice echoing mockingly, "You cannot save her, you cannot face me, you are weak." Kale squared his shoulders, gripping Seraphine's hand. "I am not weak," he said. "I am myself, I have fears, yes, but I also have courage, I have love, and I will stand." The shadow attacked, its form writhing with darkness, striking at Kale's chest. Pain surged through him, yet he did not retreat. Seraphine's magic flowed into him, reinforcing his resolve. Together they faced the shadow, not with hatred, but with acceptance and truth. Kale realized that the shadow could only persist if he accepted fear over love, doubt over trust. He stepped forward, raising his hand, and spoke clearly, "I accept myself with courage, with love, with every choice I have made. I am not afraid." The shadow recoiled, then dissolved into mist, leaving only the glowing light of Kale and Seraphine intertwined. The curse itself seemed to waver, the molten gold eyes flickering uncertainly. The energy of the palace shifted, as if the ancient magic was acknowledging their triumph. The portal collapsed, the shadows retreating fully into the depths of the palace. Kale and Seraphine stood together, hands still clasped, hearts pounding, the night silent except for their breaths. "We did it," Kale whispered, disbelief and relief mingling in his voice. Seraphine smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Yes, Kale. Together we did. But remember, love is its own kind of courage. We face the curse, the shadows, and ourselves. The trials have ended, but our choices, our bond, will continue to shape the kingdom and our lives." Kale nodded, a sense of calm washing over him. He had faced the impossible, confronted fear, shadow, and doubt, and had discovered strength beyond what he thought possible. And through it all, the one constant had been Seraphine. He felt for the first time that love and courage were inseparable, and that together they could face anything. The dawn broke over Ilarion, spilling golden light across the palace. Shadows fled before it, and the kingdom seemed to breathe in relief. Kale and Seraphine stood on the highest tower, looking out over their realm, their hands entwined, hearts aligned. "You have changed everything," Seraphine said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for me, for the kingdom. You have proven that love can conquer fear, and courage can triumph over even the darkest curse." Kale smiled, a sense of wonder filling him. "And I have found something I never expected," he said. "Not just adventure or courage, but a heart to stand with, a reason to face everything. I have found you." Seraphine's smile deepened, violet eyes shimmering. "And I have found you, Kale. The trials tested us, the curse challenged us, and yet here we are, together." The kingdom of Ilarion stirred below them, shadows retreating as the sunlight touched towers and rivers. The trials were over, the curse defeated for now, and the palace no longer held the weight of unseen threats. But Kale and Seraphine knew that life, like the kingdom, would always have challenges. Yet they were no longer afraid, for they had discovered a strength deeper than magic or sword, a bond of heart and courage that would endure through any shadow, any trial, any night. And in the quiet of that golden morning, two hearts beat together, ready to face whatever the world could bring, bound by love, courage, and the ultimate choice they had made: to choose each other always.